Hey folks, in this video we're going to be discussing how to use dates in Google Sheets query function. We're going to begin by exploring how to reference dates in our where clause. We're then going to talk about date formatting. We're going to explore some methods that we have in our select statement, such as year, quarter, and month. And then we're going to conclude by touching on cell references and various ways that you might have to manage a date in order to get it to continue to work within your query statement. We're going to be working off of our data in sheet 1, which contains country names, people names, month, and then some values associated with them. We're going to keep it really simple, and we're just going to be focusing on columns A, B, and C in here. And we're going to be working out of our example tab. So I'm going to begin by running a query on sheet 1 that references the entire range. And then I am going to select A, B, and C, where C equals date 2022 01 01. I'm also going to order by column A and B. I want my header rows, so I include a 1 in there. So the first thing that we're going to be touching on is our where clause and just learning how to use date in here. And the difference between a standard where statement, like if we were to reference the country, compared to a value, is that when we're working with date, we need to define after our clause what we want to pull in, which is the date. So we have to say equals, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, is not, any of those, and then we have to use the word date, and then we have to enter our date in this formatting. We're going to be diving deeper into formatting in just a little bit, so we'll break down what's happening in there. But for the time being, you have to enter in the date with the year first, followed by the month, followed by the day. We're going to hit enter, and you can see that we returned a successful query in here that is providing us with countries, people, and the month when the month is January 2022. For reference in here, I'm going to include an additional clause in our where statement that says where A is equal to United States, so that you can see the difference between what's happening with date and what's happening with a non-date data type, right? You can see that we don't need to say and A equals text or string and then the string, but for date we do. And the reason is dates are challenging for computers to process. It's because they're ambiguous. So one of the ways that this input here, 2022-01-01, could be interpreted by a computer program is that you want 2022 to be subtracted by 1 and then subtracted by 1. And an indication of what that, like what I'm talking about here is, check it out. When we just highlight that expression, you can see the tooltip is giving us 2020. That's because 2022 is losing 1, and then it's losing an additional 1 on top of it, which gives us 2022, right? So if I went back in here and I changed this 1 to a 6, and then I highlighted this, check out what it's giving us. It's giving us 2015. That's because 2022 is being subtracted by 6, which brings us to 2016, and then an additional value is being taken off, which is getting it to 2015. That 2015 and the 2020 that we saw before it is not representing the year. It's the computer literally doing math because it's viewing those characters as a math function. Additionally, dates could be misconstrued as serial numbers, telephone numbers, or a date. That's why the query function requires you to state date prior to entering in date in this required formatting, right? So now we're going to hit enter, and now you'll see instead of January, we're getting June in there. But we would not be able to go in here and type, for example, June 1, 2022, you can see we're getting an error, right? And we're actually getting a really helpful error relative to query where it's saying invalid date literal. And then it's putting in the date that we literally typed in, June 1, 2022. Date literals should be in the formatting that we put in there, which is year, month, day. So we're going to go back to the query that we originally had in there, and we're going to touch on that error message in just a little bit. But we're going to use it as a jumping off point to get to the format clause. So the way that you use format is you call format and then you reference the column that you want to format. And then you have the ability to enter in a couple variations on these three parameters, which is the year, the month, and the day. So we're going to go through each parameter, and we're going to explore the full scope of options that you have available to you within the format clause. So we're going to begin with month. If you enter in a single M, you will get the month to appear as it does currently in our output here. We're going to get the number 6. If we put 2 M's, we are going to get an expression of 2 digits. And that really only becomes a factor for anything under 10. So 1 through 9 will be expressed as 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, so on up through 9 until it gets to 10, and then it will appear as it normally does. If you enter in 3 M's, you'll get an abbreviation of the full month. So because we're asking for June 2022, when we enter in 3 M's like this, we're getting the abbreviation of June. If we change this to 1, for example, it would appear as Jan. And if we put it in there as 2, it would appear as Feb. If we added a 4th M, we would get the full expression of the month. If we added a 5th M, nothing happens. Oh, it goes to F, sorry. Something does happen. Let's see how far we can go. Let's go to 6. 6 just goes right back to February. 7 doesn't change. So 6 is the maximum amount of values that you have when working with month, with 5 being the beginning letter for whatever reason. So what we'll do now is we're going to move into day. If you enter in single day, you get 1 same way that you do with month. If you add in 2, you will get the same expression where you get a 0 in front of single digit numbers. If you add in 3, you'll get the abbreviated day of week. So February 1st, I think we're in here, right? February 1st apparently is a Tuesday. So if you enter in 3 Ds like that, you will get the abbreviation of Tuesday. If you enter in 4 Ds, you'll get the full expression of the day of week that it falls on. If you add in 5, get the same thing. If you add in 6, same thing. So the max for date is 4. You have 4 different characters that you can work with, from single digit, double digit, abbreviated day of week, full day of week. For year, you have, I believe you only have 4. So if you enter 1Y, you'll get the abbreviated version of 2022, or any other year. If you enter in 2Ys, you'll get the same thing. 3Ys represents the full expression of 2022. 4Ys gives you the full expression of 2022. 5Ys gives you 2022. So basically you have a maximum of 5 characters that you can use for month, right? Where you'll get that abbreviated version in there if you enter in 5. If you enter in 4, you get the full expression. For day, you have full expression is day of week. So for our example here, I'm just going to do 4 M's, 2 D's, and 4 Y's. And you can see we get February 1, 2022. We can go in here and we could enter in 4Ds if we wanted to. And we could say Tuesday, February 1st, 2022. Or we could enter in something like this, which would be 4Ms, 4Ys represents February 2022. This is personally my preference when I'm working in a lot of my data environments to present months or time periods in this way, because I think this is how a lot of my peers talk about their performance and their segmentation. I'm located in the United States, so this is how we typically will refer to our dates. I know that's not always the case around the world, which is a further complication around how computer programs process dates, because there are so many different ways that those values can be used. Cool. So what we're going to do now is we are going to go into some of our select methods here. So we're going to talk about year, which is very similar to our math operations in select, where you call the operation and then you reference the column. So if we enter in year, you'll see we get year over here. If we enter in quarter, you'll see that we get the quarter. And then we have the ability to enter in month. And you'll see we get the month over here. Now, the interesting thing about month is let's go to January so you can see what's happening here. So January is the first month of the year. And you can see that when you use month in the select statement, you get 0. If we go to December, which is the 12th month of the year, you can see we get an 11. For whatever reason, query interprets the month operator from the logical starting point of 0. But that's not necessarily the starting point that you want to use. So if you do want to clean that up, all you have to do is just add +1. And then you will get it to appear in the way that you would probably anticipate and your peers would anticipate it. Cool. So we're going to wrap up by diving into cell references. Cell references are something that I use in a lot of my work. And basically what it allows you to do is to establish an input point where your collaborators can adjust slices of data without having to go into your query statement. So basically, like if somebody wanted to go in here and they wanted to look at something for February 2022, they would have to go into the actual query like this and understand that this is where they changed the code. And I personally think that that's unreasonable for the broadest accessibility to the analysis. So I like to add slicers in there to make it more accessible to technically literate individuals. My goal is to lower the barrier to entry. Cell references are really good for that, because then you can create drop-down menus or input fields where people can type things the way that they would access like Google search or something like that. But that cell reference is going to cause some challenges for us, because of the way that dates can be processed sometimes. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to clean this up so that we can, it's easier for us to kind of look at what's going on in here. So now we're going to have a longer list, but all that's changed is that now we're getting every country value in here instead of things that are segmented by Canada. And instead of hard coding our date into our where clause, I'm going to use a cell reference in order to use cell I1 in order to change the date that we're looking for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just plug in a cell reference, and we're not going to dive into and deconstruct cell references in this video. There's another video that I have that will be discussing how cell references work if you want to have a deeper understanding of what's happening in here. But for the purposes of this tutorial, we're only going to focus on working with dates. And what you can see is when I reference I'm referencing the wrong cell. But even when I'm referencing the right cell, you can see we're getting an error in here. And we're getting that familiar error that we got earlier, where now instead of saying, we originally wrote in our error was June 1st or January 1st, 2022. And it was like, can't do that. That's not valid. You have to format it in year, month, day formatting. And right now you're giving it's being input as 44562. So for your information, 44562 is the date value expression of January 2022. So in cell I1, we have the word January 2022. In our function menu, we have 1/1/2022. When we use the date value function, which you can see converts a date string to a date value, and we reference I1, you can see we're getting that 44562 number, right? So when we hover over here, you can see I1, when input into our query, is representing 44562, which we've come to identify as our date value over here. So what we need to do is we need to convert that number into the string that is valid for the query date parameters. So what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate over here how to use a month plus text, or more accurately, how to use a date value plus text. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the text function in order to turn this date value into the proper formatting. So text has two arguments. It has a number and then a format. In this case, our number is in cell I2. And then we're going to use a comma to move to the second argument. And we're going to use a double quote in order to format it as 4 Ys, a dash, 2 Ms, a dash, and 2 Ds. And then we're going to add double quote to close our statement and hit enter. And now you can see January 2022, which when pushed into query is 44562, is reformatted in a year, month, day formatting, which is the requirement for Google Sheets query. So now what we're going to do is we are going to add that text solution directly into the query. So we're going to nest a text function within our query statement that will then turn our date value into the correct formatting for our query. And now when I hit enter, you can see we're getting our desired output. And just so that you can see, none of this stuff over here is being referenced inside over here. This is merely just showing you what's happening so that you can problem solve it outside of the query environment in order to get the necessary feedback, so that then when you want to apply it inside of your query, you have the ability to do so. So check it out. Here's an indication in here, right? When I hit enter, you can see I1 is colored as purple. And when we go over to our inputs over here, you can see that only I1 has that purple coloration around it, and all of these cells are not being referenced. So what we can do is we can just delete all this stuff over here, and it doesn't impact our query whatsoever. And now you have the ability to dynamically update your query statement so that you no longer have to go into query to update things, right? You're still referencing a date that is being used by your where statement in order to dynamically change your data set over here. This is something that we're going to be touching on in future videos, especially when it comes to dashboard environments and data visualization, which I think is like one of the most beneficial things to learn. But in order to do that, you need to have, in my opinion, a foundational understanding of how to work with dates. A lot of analysis work is dependent upon time series analysis, and you're going to want to be able to move between time periods, right? And what we touched on here is one way to work with dates. Another lesson that we could kind of touch on is using other operators in your where clause, such as greater than equal to, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, not equal to, which we will touch on, I think, in more practical applications in like a dashboard environment. But for the purposes of just kind of foundational beginnings, understanding how to use date in your where clause, super impactful. Understanding how to use formatting to change the visualization of it, super beneficial. Understanding that you have methods within select, such as year, quarter, month, really great. And then leveraging cell references, I think, is the next level thing. So I hope you found this helpful. I'm always interested in feedback, so please use that comment section. I have other videos that dive deeper into this stuff if you're curious and you found this helpful. And yeah, I wish you the best of luck on your data journey.